Innuendo, Book 5 of the Todd Mills Mystery Series. Author R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher Scribble Pub Press, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 34. Slipping his cell phone into the pocket of his jacket, Rawlins headed across the rough, potholed parking lot. His first major worry of the night was Todd, and if he was all right. His second was this guy, the witness, and if he was actually going to show. Jam's was a freestanding building, a green box of a place with black glass windows on one side and a pair of red neon cowboy boots on the roof. Known for its country music DJ, its tiny dance floor, and its half-dozen pool tables, it was a popular pickup bar, and Rawlins wasn't at all surprised that the witness had suggested it. So who the hell was this guy? Was he not a closet queen, but a photographer who regularly sold his pictures to the tabloids? Was the answer that simple? As he approached the door, Rawlins casually glanced around the crumbling parking lot. He should have, he realized, done this a bit differently. He should have sat in his car for a few minutes and jotted down as many license plates as he could have. Instead, he took quick note of the 15 or so cars scattered about. A couple of Ford Explorers, 3 pickup trucks, a Honda Accord, and a few other sedans. Pulling open the door, Rawlins entered a small lobby with a couple of payphones hanging on the wall to his left. It was 2 minutes to 7. He proceeded to a broad, open doorway and gazed into the main room, which was dark and faintly smoky. Glancing to his right, Rawlins saw 2 of the pool tables in use. He then peered to the left, saw some tables and chairs, the bar, and off in the dark distance, the quiet dance floor. Here and there were couples, men and women, drinking and gabbing, and a few men who'd obviously met after work for a beer. All in all, it was fairly quiet. The real action wouldn't begin for several more hours. Rawlins stood for a long moment, surveying the scene and noting that there wasn't any lone person here by himself, and that unto itself, Rawlins knew from experience, didn't bode well. A tipster like this was either here exactly on time or not at all. Scanning the dark room, Rawlins made his way to the bar where he sat on a tall stool. "What can I get you?" asked the bartender, a trim, handsome woman with long brown hair and a quick Minnesota smile. "A Liani. You bet," as she pulled him a draught. "London kegels." Rawlins turned on the stool, again looking casually over the room and toward the doorway. No one was looking his way, nor even paying him the slightest bit of attention. "You want to run up a tab?" asked the bartender, sliding the tall glass of beer to him. "Yeah." Rawlins took it, then asked, "I'm supposed to meet someone here. You haven't by chance, male or female?" "A guy." "What's he look like?" "Actually, I don't know. We've never met before." "Well, there hasn't been anyone waiting around. At least not as far as I can tell." "You late or something?" "What time were you supposed to meet?" 7. She glanced at her wristwatch, then looked up at him and winked. "Drink up, hon. The night's young." "Whatever." Sitting sideways with his right arm on the bar, Rawlins kept his attention on the door and sipped his beer. With this few people in the place, the bartender surely wouldn't have missed a single man sitting around, which meant the guy had yet to come. So how long would Rawlins give him? A half hour? If he was going to show, which Rawlins already doubted, he'd certainly make it by 7:30. Glancing down the bar, he saw the bartender casually leaning against the back counter, holding a cigarette to her mouth as she took a long drag, sucking on her vice as if it offered much more than a mere puff of smoke. Not only was the night, as she said, young, it was also slow, and she looked at Rawlins with a generous grin that could be read in a most generous of ways. Rawlins briefly returned the smallest of smiles and immediately averted his eyes. He took a sip of beer and then turned back to the entry. "Come on, buddy, don't crap out on me." Rawlins glanced at his watch. At the most 2 minutes had passed. So where was this guy, and where the hell of course was Todd? Suddenly there was a ringing right against his side, which caused him to jump. His phone. As a few heads turned his way, he put down his beer and snatched the small device out of the pocket of his jacket. Please let it be Todd, he thought. Please let him be okay. Covering his left ear with one hand, he held the receiver to his right and said, "This is Sergeant Rawlins." "Hi." Rollins immediately knew it wasn't Todd. His voice was remarkably clear and clean, with plenty of resonance, while this one was softer, even timid. It was him, the witness. Damn. From experience, Rollins guessed this guy wasn't calling to say, "Sorry, I'm going to be a couple of minutes late." Just sit tight. He was calling because he wasn't going to show. Shit, thought Rollins, realizing he was going to have to start tap dancing real quick before he lost the guy altogether. "Is this my friend?" asked Rollins. "Yeah, it's me. I'm here. I'm at Jam's, just waiting for you. Everything okay?" "Listen, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to make it." "Really?" said Rollins, feigning surprise and at the same time shaking his head in frustration. "You know, I can wait if you need a little more time. That's absolutely no problem." No, it's not that. I just can't get any more involved than I already am." "I only wanted to meet for a drink, that's all, nothing more." "Yeah, but..." "Trust me," said Rollins as he glanced over at the bartender, who looked at him and smiled back. "There's nothing to worry about. I don't know. With the receiver pressed hard against his ear, Rollins heard voices, a couple of men laughing, and what sounded like a door slamming shut. So this witness, wherever he was again calling from some anonymous phone. Rollins had to give him that. He was consistent. Fearing that he'd lose him completely if he kept pushing, Rollins forced himself to take the conciliatory path, saying, "I just wanted to meet for a quick drink, but if you're uncomfortable with that, then let's not. You've been amazingly helpful, and it's absolutely your choice if you want to limit your involvement to the tips. You've already given us, it's more than we could have hoped for. Not everyone's willing to do as much as you've done, that's for sure." "Thank you," he said, the relief clearly audible. "Thank you very much. I've been working on something, you see, and it's very complicated." "I don't doubt that. I just don't want to screw things up." "I see." Rollins had to curb his tongue, had to keep himself from asking if the guy was really a professional photographer, or perhaps he was a closet queen who had an obsession with Tim Chase. Yes, thought Rollins, if the guy was something like the later, a stalker perhaps, that would of course explain why he'd secretly spied so much going on at the Chase residence, and it would also explain why he was so reticent to meet with Rollins. He glanced across the room and saw a couple of guys laughing and talking as they sat down, then asked, "Is there anything else that you can remember? Anything else that comes to mind that might be helpful to us?" "No, not really. Not that I can think of, anyway. But I'll call right away if I do think of anything else." "Good. We'd appreciate that." Fearful that losing him now would mean losing him forever, Rollins, trying not to seem desperate, asked, "Is there any way I can contact you if I have any questions?" "Well, not really. Not even a number I could call? Say just to leave a message." "No. Like I said, I just can't get involved." "Sure, I understand." "Okay," Rollins told himself. "Think and think fast. Remember what Foster told you a few months back. That story of an informant in a drug ring and how Foster had arranged to contact him anonymously? Listen, I have an idea." Through the receiver, Rollins could hear the wail of an ambulance, and he raised his voice and said, "I want to think of some way that I can send a signal to you, some kind of signal that would tell you I need to talk to you, and I'm probably going to have some questions after all." "Like what? What were you thinking of?" "How about a cop car? If I want you to call me, I'll park an empty squad car down by Lake Harriet. I'll park it right where you saw that Saab. Can you check there, say, every day around 12:30 for the next couple of weeks?" Sure, I can do that. I can go down there and check, and if I see it there, then I'll give you a call as soon as I can." "Exactly. Cool." As the siren ambulance grew closer and louder, the witness said, "Just a minute. I can hardly hear you." The wail rose and contracted over and over, screaming as the ambulance tore to some emergency. What was it, a fire engine? Whatever type of emergency vehicle it was awfully close, and as Rollins pressed his small cellular phone to his ear, it seemed as if he could hear the siren in both ears. Actually, he could. Couldn't he? The next instant he held the phone away from his head and realized he could hear the siren just as loudly, which meant it wasn't far away, not by any means. Dear God, he looked at the two men who just sat down and in one stupid second understood that they'd walked right past the very phone the witness had been using. It was them Rollins had overheard, which meant only one thing. The witness had been willing to come only so close. Over the cry of the siren, Rollins desperately said, "Hang on 1 second. I've got one more thing to ask you." With the phone pressed to his ear, Rollins was off the bar stool and hurrying across the room, and then he was running. There was no reply from the other end, only the sound of the wail, which was now growing weaker. Rollins tore toward the entry, dashing around the corner, but there was no one standing there at the payphones, only one of the receivers gently swinging to and fro by its long cord. Rollins glanced at the door, saw it easing shut. Charging forward, he hurled open the door and ran right into the parking lot. There was no one. He glanced at each and every car, half expecting to see one racing off, its tires peeling. All he needed was a license plate number, nothing more. Instead, the lot was perfectly quiet. Spinning around, Rollins looked across Excelsior Boulevard, sure to see someone racing across on foot. Instead, the broad concrete road was deserted, virtually so. Turning from side to side, Rollins folded up his phone and slipped it back into the pocket of his jacket. The witness had been that close, only a matter of a few yards away, but his paranoia must have made those last few feet seem like a million miles. "Hey, pal," called a voice. Rollins turned, saw the bartender hanging out the half-open door, a smile on her face, her long hair hanging off her right shoulder. She said, "I hope you're coming back in to pay for that beer. You are, aren't you, right?" Acting the perfect Minnesotan and not belying his frustration, Rollins replied, "You bet." Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.